and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bubble podcast powered by Noodle Seed Studios. Today we have a very, very special guest with us today. The reason why he's super, super special is because I know a lot of people are building with AI right now. There is a certain deflation of the cost of building software, and therefore the idea is theoretically anyone can build today. The bigger problem, though, is it's easy to build, it's actually difficult to distribute, even more difficult to actually build what the consumers actually want. And one of the reasons why I'm very excited about this conversation is because our guest, Matt, is a three-time founder and a community builder. After doing his MBA at Berkeley Haas, he did management consulting, strategic finance, and then launched his first startup in 2017 in legal tech. Raised a smaller round, shipped a product, never found product market fit. Then did another, startup. Was the VP of business operations at Ally.io during its hyper growth. Unfortunately, that did not work out as well as probably he imagined as well. That's based on my research. I will ask him to expand on that a little bit as well. It was later acquired by Microsoft. He founded Funnel IQ after that, and then didn't find product market fit with that as well. He did, while doing all of that, managed to create an incredible community that grew to be successful, had an incredible business. It was called RevOps Co-op. It was basically driven around revenue operations, sort of the work that he did at Ally.io as well, and then eventually launched a lot of very interesting things through memberships, events, courses, and the flagship RevOps AF conference. He now has a startup again, this time around, third time around. A lot of people say third time is the charm, where he's basically helping people go to for B2B markets, go to market. It's called Eventful. I believe it's heyeventful.com, where he's basically doing a lot of AI venue sourcing, registration, check-in, badge scanning, as well as doing webinars and podcasts, doing that in a way that is very intuitive. We'll get a sense of that in just a moment. But the reason why this podcast is super, super important is because, again, the bigger problem is no longer AI and tools and what to build and how to build it, but rather figuring out what consumers actually buy. And you need to have a certain amount of experience. You need to have failed a few times to really understand how any of this works. Today, we have with us Matthew Volm. Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Just wanted some confirmation. My team did the research. Just wanted to get some clarity. Was it on point, or did I miss a point here or there?
No, it was everything was on point. The only thing that I'll correct you on is, and this all depends on how you define success, but you mentioned
Uh-huh.
Ally. I was an early employee there, VP of business operations, was there for about 2 years. The company did go on to have a successful exit to Microsoft, was acquired by Microsoft, and the product was actually turned into Microsoft Viva Goals, which
Oh,
was brought to market by Microsoft for a short period of time, and then eventually sunsetted and no longer exist. But I wasn't a product or engineering person there. Again, I was the VP of business operations, so I didn't necessarily have a hand in the product. But I know a lot of the people that I was with at Ally are actually still at Microsoft, but now obviously working on different things, not on the Viva Goals product since that no longer exists.
that makes sense. I want to get a sense of your sort of early founder era, right? So, the couple of things that you did early on with the legal tech, with Funnel IQ, what was that experience like? What do you think? I mean, what did you come out of it with now that you look back and see those experiences?
Yeah. A couple of things, and you mentioned working on, the current uh, called startup product with Eventful that I'm working on, and problems that I'm trying to solve there, and how this is now, call it the third time around. I think it's actually probably much more than three because I've had plenty of other things that I've kicked the tires on, even some things that I've worked on building a little bit in between there that I've just never seen the light of day. But I think that's just the life of a founder or entrepreneur. For me, early founder days and reflecting back and looking at some of the things that I've learned, one is I think it's critically important to understand the problem that you're going out to solve. as a founder when it comes to the company that you're building, the product that you're building. So you mentioned the first company that I started was in the legal tech space. I am not a lawyer, but I am married to one. My wife is a lawyer and attorney, and so I saw this problem that she was having around timekeeping, where she was in private practice, had to track every 6 minute increment of her day and get that into their billing system because that is how professional services and legal works within the United States, right? So every 6 minute increment, every tenth of an hour gets billed out to somebody else. Well, you can imagine going around day to day, right? You're doing a lot of different things. Timekeeping is not always top of your mind. And so what I
Mm.
saw her doing was jotting a lot of these things down on post-it notes. And then those post-it notes get collected throughout the week. And then before, billing and invoices are run, typically it's late at night on like a Thursday night. She sits down at our kitchen table with the stack of post-it notes and literally just does data entry. And I was like, there's got to be a better way than that. And so we look to solve that problem by leveraging voice technology like Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri for lawyers to track and input their time. So you could say things like, hey, start a timer for the Johnson matter. This is what I'm working on, right? Or hey, I just spent 12 minutes on XYZ. And it would just get pushed into your billing or invoicing system. So kind of on the fly, you could do that. Now, this might sound, I'll say, easy to do given today's technology, but like you mentioned, this was in 2017. So this was pre AI, pre Open AI, all that stuff. So we
I was just gonna
literally
say,
were,
do you think you were a bit too early into that market
oh,
because growing
for
up now?
for sure. Yeah, for sure. But I guess the reason why I bring that up and tell that story is I was trying to solve a problem that someone else had that I haven't experienced myself. And even with Funnel IQ, I mentioned having you mentioned how I did have these problems as a business operations leader, a VP of Biz Ops at Ally, but it wasn't as inherent as I think some of the problems that I'm out trying to solve now around events. Because with events, it's been a lot of what we've been doing for the last 2 years at RevOps Co-op. I mean, we've done at this point now hundreds and hundreds of webinars, in-person events. We have our own conference, like you mentioned, RevOps AF. And what I've learned and what I had to experience firsthand was just the manual tedious nature of running events and getting them planned. I was doing Google searches, managing spreadsheets, cloning workflows, creating zaps, like going through the same process over and over and over again just to get these things up and running. And, when you live that a couple of times, you are just like, this needs to get fixed. And so I think that's the one thing that, at least as I look at now versus how I'm kind of attacking the problems that I am with Eventful versus the things I've worked on in the past. It's one of the big differences. And then the other thing I'll mention, which I know maybe some other people out there feel, is like early founder days, especially before I'd ever started a company. You're always like, how do you do that? Like, what do I do? Like, what like, do you need to be at that? Like before I started my first company, I was like, okay, you got to be like an engineer who understands business to be able to like start and build a technology company. And at the end of the day, what I learned is like none of that stuff is true. Like, find team members, people to fill in the gaps and the holes where you don't have. But what you ultimately need is you need a problem worth solving, and you need to be passionate about that problem. And there's really no rhyme or reason as to why certain things, I'll say, excite me or why I'm passionate about certain things than others. That's just where you've just got to dive in, figure that stuff out yourself. But
True.
if you have those two things, then yeah, you'll just keep attacking a problem until you figure out how to fix it.
No, that makes sense. The first couple of startups that you did was pre-AI era, and so the building, even I would argue the economic modeling in many ways. I think there was a different time when from idea to actually launching required at least some form of funding, pre-seed or something, right? Today, people are building overnight and launching overnight, and the entire model has shifted. I'm not saying it is successful. I'm just saying the possibilities or the realms of possibilities have changed and increased quite a lot. I'm curious though, The first two startups, pre-AI, and this one, right in, knee deep into the AI space. Um, what's the difference in terms of building, in terms of the hardcore business development, idea generation? What has been different this time around in your experience?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is, and this is again, at least for me specifically. So my background, you mentioned finance, accounting, business side. Not an engineer by training. I've never had like a PM, product management role, right? So like, um, those are areas where I've relied on other people, my co-founders, to fill in those gaps.
Hmm.
It's a lot easier to obviously like build product now, but that doesn't mean that it's any easier to build the right product or build one that actually solves people's problems. So as I look back at those first two startups that I have, things were a lot slower to get from the idea and kind of product vision that I had in my head to an actual like product that worked.
Hmm.
Like some and worked, right. Doesn't mean it worked at scale. Doesn't mean that it was doing things for thousands and thousands of people, but like something that I could put into the hands of someone else and say, hey, try this. Just took a lot of time, and there were a lot of people and other steps in between there. Versus now, today, I'm able to go from idea to it like a testing something locally on my machine and hours, could be an hour depending on like the size of like the feature, the thing that I'm trying to build. So the speed is a lot faster, but it doesn't mean that like it's any easier to build the right product. So like imagine, back in the pre-AI day, right? Takes a lot longer to like build and get something into the hands of someone else, and then you learn like, oh, this thing's not quite right, or it does this but not this other thing, right? And so then you got to go through that cycle again. So the iteration process takes a lot longer. Whereas now that can be accelerated. And that's how you ultimately figure out and find product market fit. It's not because you can vibe code something or build something over a weekend and bring it to market and like, well, look at I have a business. It's like, no, like you can build something, try it out, figure out what works or doesn't work about it,
Hmm.
and then go back and iterate on it. And the fact that you can do that quickly now, that's the biggest thing that's changed.
Hmm. No, that makes sense. Um, Tell me a bit about Eventful. How did you sort of you mentioned early on that you were working on other people's ideas in many ways, and that was a little tough in terms of how, as a founder, you're able to build the right product. What was different this time around? My understanding is obviously it's very much driven. I can see the language there. It's very much driven around community, and because you had that experience around communities, this is an extension of what you were doing at RevOps Co-op. But run me through the evolution of how this sort of came to be, and what do you guys do right now?
Yeah. You you talked about Funnel IQ, and that was, I guess, geez, like 5, 6 years ago that I started working on uh, the current company, which I guess like legal entity is all still part of the same thing. But what we've worked on is taken many, many, many different forms. So 5, 6 years ago when I started the business, we raised pre-seed and seed on this idea of Funnel IQ, which was basically, imagine if you combined a BI tool with a data warehouse into one product. That's what we were trying to build with Funnel IQ. And so I was like, all right, that's the project we're going to build. We started building it, raised some money to do that. And then we were like, all right, we're going to start a community for people in revenue operations because that's who we ultimately want to and plan to sell our product into Funnel IQ. So we are like, hey, we'll start this community. It will deliver value outside of our product. We'll be able to interact with the people that we ultimately want to be aware of us and buy from us. We'll be able to hear how they talk, what problems they have, and it'll be this unique distribution channel that only Funnel IQ will have. So we started RevOps Co-op for that reason. We branded it separately intentionally, and then we just said RevOps Co-op, a community by Funnel IQ. Well, we worked on Funnel IQ for a couple of years, and then, like I said, this was my second startup, and we got to a point where we brought the product to market. We had some paying customers, but just never found product market fit. And I've been through that song and dance before. And so I was sitting there and I was like, all right, like this is feeling like my first startup. And I was like, so I was like, I kind of have two options right now. It's like I can continue down this path, and in 10 months I'll probably run out of money and I'll have to write another Medium post on what it's like to shut down my second startup in a handful of years. Or we can cut the cord now, go back to the drawing board, and kind of see what else we can work on. So we decided to do the latter. So I sunsetted Funnel IQ, and then we had RevOps Co-op, and I was like, well, there's a couple thousand people in here. I've never thought about how to monetize it or drive revenue through it. I was like, let's see if there's some ways to drive some revenue through the community. So first thing we started was a sponsorship program, or a partner program, because I was like, hey, if this is going to be valuable for a revenue technology product like Funnel IQ, I bet you other revenue technology companies would want to get in front of our members as well. So we launched our partner program, started bringing on some customers that way. Then we gradually added some courses and education that people could pay for. Then gradually added some paid versions of our memberships. Then we added like our conference as well, which we do RevOps AF in North America and Europe every year. So same way that you build a software product, except for us, it was just a community where we're like, hey, let's continue to kind of add on programs that our members would want. And through this whole time, I was like, hey, I'm going to keep my ear to the ground to see what other problems are out there that would be worth solving or building technology around. And obviously, with the community, I hear and see every day plenty of problems that operators are faced with. But again, like a lot of them, I don't necessarily live inherently with myself, because I'm not a revenue operator day to day. I'm a founder. I'm a CEO. And so it's like, okay, like some of those are interesting, but like, I don't know, like nothing that I want to dive into. And then, like I said, with events, with our partner program and our sponsors, a lot of our sponsors, doing webinars with us and doing in-person events. So small group dinners, happy hours. And, when we started doing these and we were doing one every now and then, it was like, all right, like it's fine. I'll clone a few HubSpot workflows, and I'll manually update a couple of email templates, and I'll set up a few Zaps, and we'll spin up a few spreadsheets, and I'll do a couple of Google searches to find a venue, right? Like no big deal. But then when you have to do multiple events a week and multiple events a month, and then you're like, I cannot spend my whole days like doing these very manual, time intensive things. And so that was kind of how I don't know, stumbled upon, but like I kind of felt that pain. And then for whatever reason, like I was just like, I couldn't really stop thinking about that particular problem. I looked at other companies that were out there in the space, and they'd been around for a while, and no one was really doing things with a fresh perspective, like this is what's capable with AI and technology today sort of lens. And I was like, we can do that. And so started building a product to solve our own problems at RevOps Co-op, and then now in the process of bringing that to market and solving the same problems that other companies have that are also doing webinars and in-person events and showing up at conferences and stuff like that.
Hmm. Makes sense. The website mentions it's Eventful is a platform for every human moment in B2B GTM. That's a mouthful. Run me through the thought behind human moments in B2B work. What does that mean?
Yeah. So I feel like when it comes to go to market, we have, and just sales, marketing, in general, even customer success, we've kind of, I think, on the pendulum, we've gone down this path of forgetting that at the end of the day, you are people trying to sell to other people. But we get lost in how many emails can we send and how many target accounts can we hit, and do we have this integration set up, and is it bi-directional, and is data flowing in where it needs to flow, and stuff getting time stamped, and all like those things are important, right? Like I'm not saying that they're not, but at the end of the day, what actually matters is what you and I are doing right now, which is two people having a conversation, connecting. And that's ultimately what sales and customer success and marketing is all about. And so there's all, like with Eventful, it's like there's all these things around in-person events, around webinar events, around conferences that happen, that need to happen, when you show up to these things, right? You need to have the ability to scan badges and collect email addresses. And eventually that list needs to get into your CRM for the conferences that you show up at. And you need to get people to register for your events, and you need to send them calendar invites so they know where to show up and when, and they need to be reminded about it because people are people and they forget, right? Like all that stuff matters. But like at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is just connect with other people. And I think it's actually a bit ironic and interesting that with AI and all of the things that can help us do and all the things it can automate for people, I think what it's really meant to do is enable us to do the stuff that humans were always meant to do, which is literally just interact with other people, right? We shouldn't be sitting at our keyboards trying to like bulk upload a bunch of people leads into our CRM. Like that's not something that a person should have to do. And certainly not something a person should have to literally have a full-time job dedicated to. So like let's automate those things so that at the end of the day we can just focus on this stuff, right? The fun stuff, the human moments within go to market. And there's a lot of things within go to market that I think we've forgotten should be human, and we're trying to just make that easier, make that possible for people.
No, that makes sense. I think the thought and the insight here that I'm also experiencing is that because the digital world has become so noisy, courtesy of these agents and this AI and this AI slop, that's, I mean, like going on LinkedIn is a nightmare now, because everybody, whether they have a good thought or a bad thought, is just throwing that thought out so poorly, that I genuinely do not trust, text-based content. I don't trust emails that much. The only emails I trust are the ones that are poorly written, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so suddenly the value of genuinely interacting with a human that I can trust as a human has increased radically. Like I found myself increasingly becoming an introvert over the last decade. And then very recently, I literally went last week I recently moved to Atlanta, so I went to a website at meetup.com or something, and I was like, can I find events with people who are like me so that I can go and interact with them? Because this is very lonely. I'm
Yeah.
connected to the world. There are humans everywhere, but I can't trust whether they're humans or agents or whatever. And I actually miss it. And so you're absolutely right, where most people don't realize the real value is all in that human interaction, courtesy of AI. Um, the question then I would probably have is, what does that look like, though, to you particularly? Because you've been running these sort of communities and human interactions for a while now. Um, in terms of, I'm not talking about tools and technology, I'm talking about actual genuine interactions and how that sort of impact, let's say, B2B sales or GTM or driving business. How do you do sales at scale with those human moments intact, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I guess two things. One, what you're describing is what I like to call trust inflation, which is
Hmm.
it's a lot more expensive these days to to develop trust with
Hmm.
another person. And to answer your question on like the scalability thing, I guess like I don't know if the hot take would be that you can't, but I'd say maybe the better answer is that you just need to change your definition of what scaling means.
Hmm.
And it's about a trade-off for quality over quantity. And I think what we've all been trained to do a lot of over the last couple of years is think that like more is always better. And while that may be true as it relates to customers and revenue, as you work your way up the funnel, that is not always the case, right? If I tell you you can have bucket A, which has 1,000 MQLs in it, 1,000 people in it, or you can have bucket B, which has 100. Bucket A only has 5% match to your ICP. Bucket B has 100% match to your ICP. It's like, which bucket would you rather take and interact with? Bucket B, right? Like
Mm, mhm,
2x the amount of ICP. But if what you're measured on or what you've been trained on for the last how many years is that, well, I need more at the top to get down, so because I like that's my focus area. So it's like you need to understand that right now the goal is about how can you put yourself in front of the people that matter to you in as many different ways as possible. And I would much rather show up to a dinner where I know that 15 of the 20 people in that room are going to be like a great match for ISCP and people that I want to talk to, as opposed to sending a like an email out to 10,000 people where maybe a handful of them might care and nothing's probably going to get really read or clicked through. It's like, yeah, like one, less people and more intensive and takes more time, but man, the output and the value that you can derive from that is going to be so much greater than
mhm,
it would be through other channels. So like scalable does not and should not mean like easy, right?
mhm,
And I think that's one of the things that people struggle with, especially around in-person stuff. But again, in today's day and age, like that's where, I mean, you said it yourself, like that's where the trust gets developed. That's where the trust gets built. That doesn't happen over email or LinkedIn or these other channels anymore. So you got to show up face to face.
no, that makes sense. Talking about showing up face to face, and this is something again I'll tailor from my own experience because I was very surprised by the fact that I was doing that. Um, Face to face is, I mean, we're face to face right now, but this is still digital, right? And so I would break it down into real face to face, like real world, physically in front of each other, and then digital first. And over the last decade or so, it was all about digital. It was all about it wastes time, it wastes energy getting all these people together. You can connect everybody all over the world. Just come to a platform, come to a website, come to whatever. But then when I was looking towards interacting with people, to be fair, last week when I was looking at these events, the first thing I did was I said no online. I literally just cut off on all online because I genuinely wanted to. And you're absolutely right. Online probably had 500 people attending an average event. I didn't want 500. I wanted 15 or 20 or people I can speak to or connect with, right? And so
Hmm.
this is like we went all the way towards one side, and I feel like we're now itching back towards the more human side of things. But that more human side is also more costly. It takes more effort. You need to drive. I have an event in the evening, and my wife just came to me and she said, "Oh, our son has a soccer class, and so how are we going to manage this logistics?" And if it was online, I would have just taken it on the phone. So there's always that counter thesis to that as well. The heart wants in person, logistics and finance and efficiency wants digital first. And so my understanding is your platform does both, but your thesis says the biggest winners are more face to face, physical, in person. Run me through your belief and where do you see all of this going?
Well, I think the winners will do digital and I'll say in person, but the thing that combines the two is the face to face piece. So I think a couple of things. One, if you are, if you're, with the exception of like super early stage companies that are first bringing their product to market, where you're trying to find just like one particular channel or way to sell and drive new business, like you should, as a marketing team, whether you're a marketing team of one or you have a big group, like you should invest your budget and resources across multiple channels, and it should be digital and it should be in person, because I've learned this through the community is like you can't be, no people out there are gonna do 100% of what you provide to them. So like through our community RevOps Co-op, I know that 100% of our members are not going to participate in 100% of the things that we do. Some people love the in-person stuff. Other people are the introverts and they're like, you know what? I don't want to do in person, but I will literally show up to every webinar that you run. And, other people do a little bit of both. Some people don't do either, and they just participate in our Slack group. So that's why it's important for you to definitely spread your resources across these other channels. And you are right that face to face interactions, I say whether it's digital or in person, it is more time intensive.
Mm,
But this is where AI is changing the game with this stuff is like all the stuff that doesn't involve human to human connection, like that stuff where pre-AI would take a long time and also a lot of effort is now like being pushed to zero, like very, very fast. Like we're building a product there. Like with technology, you can do a lot of these things, right? Like venue sourcing, like used to be one of those things where it's like, you do your Google searches, maybe you make some phone calls, you like kind of find a venue after a couple of hours. Now, like through our product, you could literally tell our venue sourcing agent what you're looking for, what your budget is, what city, and within a matter of minutes, we'll give you like five of the best options. You can reach out to all of them. You can have your venue done by like the next day, right? And so like those are examples of how like AI is changing a lot of like the logistical non-human stuff, driving the cost of that down to as close to zero as possible. And
mm,
then the human stuff, right, is where all the value lies. And to your point, the reason why you need to spread your efforts across channels instead of doing just one is for exactly what you mentioned is like some people stuff comes up, right? Like even with in-person events, we do our dinner events, right? And some things that we always hear there from people are like, I would love to, but I'm a parent. My kid has soccer. Other kids have other things after school. Like I just straight up can't. But if we do things in the afternoon, then people are like, oh well, like work, right? I've got these meetings, and I've got to get on like the train or wherever home. So like there's always going to be reasons why certain people are just not able to do or participate in some of the stuff, and that's exactly why you need to mix it up in terms of
right.
channels and just how you approach each one. But yeah, like super, I think like with AI it's driving the costs down to where it makes sense for you to spend more time and effort in them because that's where the value is, that's where the trust is able to be built.
No, that makes sense. You gave a very interesting use case of, let's say, finding the venue, right? And that's what I think a lot of people are now beginning to do, where a lot of these research and evaluation tasks that we do every day, every business, every role, every job has certain research and evaluation tasks that they have to do. They have to go on Google, go through a bunch of stuff, create a sense of what needs to be done, and that I think is right now being converted through these different agents. But I think we're also in the first stage of that, where you really individually have to sit down and build all those sort of integrations and make sure that your agent is able to see the right things and the relevant things. And in many ways, for example, you mentioned venues. I'm not sure how many of them have actually built the infrastructure to properly give the access to, say, let's say, an agent coming in and identifying what this venue is, what it does, whether it has all the information, whether it has all the booking information, costs, so on and so forth. And that's where that's like the sort of agentic layer or the dead internet theory, where humans may not need to be on the internet anymore. It's just agents talking to agents, and then humans can get their answer and go do what they have to do in the real world. I'm curious, while you've been building that, what were some of the major challenges that you found as you've interacted with like these, let's say, hundreds of thousands of nodes, right? Whether it's a venue, whether it's a cafe or XYZ. And how important then do you think is, or let's say MCPs, or that sort of agentic layer, that operating system agentic layer that I feel like needs to be built now for that future? Because while we can imagine it, we can get excited. The moment you sit down and start building it, you realize the problem is not you. You can build whatever you want. It's just that the right data is not available, or the right highways aren't there for your agents to actually go do, and that's an inevitability that I think is going to be solved in the next, let's say, 6 months or 36 months. But what has your experience been, and how important then do you think are these highways and MCPs for that world?
Yeah. So even with something like venues, there's still a lot of judgment involved, right? Like,
Like taste?
yeah, like for example, like you could give an agent all of the requirements in the world, but if I go to like a website, I can basically like immediately just tell like when I land there, like, yeah, this is the vibe, or like, nah, this is not it. Right. And an agent's not going to be able to do that. But if I can get an agent to help me basically get a shortcut to like, for example, the list of what those venues are, then that is actually super valuable. One other example actually that we just released in the product is the same thing around conferences. So a lot of times, right, people that are looking to participate in events, companies that are looking to participate in events, it's like what conferences are out there where our ICP is going to be. And so we have a like event intelligence or event search in the product now, where like you can say like, hey, I'm looking for conferences in North America for revenue operations. We know what your company is, and we develop like an ICP report for you based on your website. So it's like, okay, based on your search, based on your ICP, we go out, we do some deep research, and we come back and we give you a list of typically like 6 to 10 conferences, and then from there you can add them to your event calendar within Eventful. You can spin up badge scanning forms. Like you can take a lot of action from there. But we also give you like a standard like data enriched view into every event. And so that's another example though where it's like we just want to give you a shortcut to getting to the like a short list, right? But we know like you at the end of the day are the one uh with the judgment, and you're going to be able to tell when you visit the website or you check out who we told you the other sponsors are, right? Like how good of a fit this is going to be from you. But man, if we can take away, a couple of hours of research for you, like that would be super valuable, and it is. And what's interesting, I think, at least for me, especially as we're building out this product, we don't have MCP capabilities yet, but it's something that we're going to be working on. Is I think like the surface of where people interact with like with software is just changing, right? Like it's kind of like even with Google search, right? Like everyone's going to ChatGPT or Claude to ask their
Mm.
questions now. And so same thing, it's like people are thinking like, hey, I don't want to like have to like go to your app to like log in and do a thing. I just want to do a thing through my bot of choice, right? My AI of choice, whether it's Claude or OpenAI or whoever. And so I think like MCP is kind of like it's like the new API, right? Like if you're building a technology company, like you kind of gotta have it. And I think the interesting thing, at least for building technology these days, that is different again back to like the pre AI world, which was like pre AI, you were trying to figure out like a way. It's like, okay, how can I build a product that like people have to go to like every day or like every week? Like you got to log in, you got to do some things, right? Like how can I do like build something like that, right? And now today, like your product actually has to do a thing without someone ever having to go into it. And
Mm.
that is very different, like a very different way to build. But then it also means you got to get comfortable with some things that you didn't have to previously get comfortable with in terms of like how and how much data are you going to be sharing, and like it's just there's a lot more that goes into like building today. So I think like the ones that'll win today though are the ones who are going to be like leaning in to that stuff and trying to be ahead of the curve with everyone else, and they're going to be the ones that are you know opening everything up first, and they're going to be the ones with that are MCP first, and really leveraging that and doing everything possible to make it as easy for their users to get value from their product, even if it means that they're not actually logging in or going into their product to get that value.
Mm. That makes sense. I'm gonna come bring this towards a close, but again, I'll circle back to what we started off with, right? So we spoke about your advice based on the first few startups that you did. Um, I'm curious now, and I want to add particularly the AI element to it. The reason why I'm saying this is because I think we had a sense of what the world looked like in terms of startups and building. You have an idea, go to a VC, get a certain amount of funding. If the idea hits, there's product market fit. You're gonna grow and you're gonna scale and you're gonna create $1 billion company at some point. Today, if you have an idea and you create something, it takes a week for someone else to come in and create a copycat. And copycats are just everywhere. And I just feel like my thought is the version of the world where it's all about scalability and it's all about $1 billion businesses might not exist anymore, and it increasingly might just end up being like more and more lifestyle businesses. You can do like 2 million, 3 million, $5 million of revenue. Everybody's making good money. It's a very small team. The same product, the same use case can have like 50 competitors working in different geographies, different consumers, and all sharing that sort of market. And that's a fundamentally different way of approaching building in the first place, because you're now suddenly saying, listen, I want to be revenue positive, I want to be profitable, I don't care about burn, scale. I probably don't even want to go to a VC anymore, as long as I can actually solve the problem and have customers who can pay for it in a profitable way. And obviously that will require a complete shift in your entire strategy. Again, that's my thought. I'm curious to understand how you've evolved and what learnings and suggestions you would have for founders now building in this post AI world.
Yeah. So at least as it relates to VC and funding, I think I do agree in that you can do a lot without needing external funding. And I know, like, I'm trying to do as much of that as possible right now. Like I still have the same cap table because we're on the same legal entity, like I mentioned, that I had with Funnel IQ and everything else. But we've essentially been a bootstrap business for the last, like 3 or 4 years, and I'm trying to do as much as possible with Eventful by funding it with revenue and sales as I possibly can before I even like want to think about like going out and like trying to raise another round. The I guess the one thing that I would push back on that you mentioned or challenge you on is that um, while it might be easy to build, say, copycat products, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to build copycat businesses. Because again, like the building is only one element. You can build a product, like, I mean, go out there, you could build a product that does exactly what DocuSign does today, or you go out and build a product that does exactly what I'm forgetting the form company.
The type form.
Yeah, that does type, like, right, like, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to build a business that's a
Mhm.
replica of what they have. Because again, it's like, okay, let's say you go out and you do that, right? Like, well, how are you going to get your first customers? Like, are you gonna do outbound? Are you gonna leverage your network? Then once you learn how to sell, how are you like, are you gonna
True.
hire a salesperson? Are you like, what's the price point on your product? Is it high velocity? Is it like longer sales cycles? You gonna do paid ads? There's this whole AEO thing. You need a website. Like, then like after that, you're gonna do webinars, thought leadership events. You're gonna show up at conferences. You're gonna do small group dinners. Like, there's so, like, how are you gonna support the customers, right? Like, once they come on, how are you gonna maintain the product that you've built? Are you going to continue to do that? Can you, if you're continuing to also sell and do all these other things? Like,
Hmm.
that's the part that people, I think, fail to realize. And that's where I think like the those who will be successful, like that's where they'll figure that stuff out. They will figure out how to do all of those things above and beyond just building the product. And hopefully that does make it easier for people to have, I'll say real, but like, like SMB type businesses without needing to always go down the venture path, or at least feel like that's kind of the only option if they want to build a technology company. But I don't know, I think it's like still too early to tell, right? I don't think we're
Hmm.
there yet.
Makes sense. And then one last question, because the podcast is called Beyond the Bubble. There are two shouts in the market right now. One is all about a dystopian future where everything is going to be automated by AGI and we're all going to be jobless and just probably sitting and talking to each other. And, I don't know what we'll be doing. There people are talking about universal basic income. They're talking about a reimagination of the economic model of how we live, essentially. And then there is the utopian model, where AI is going to propel us into this sort of utopia, productivity gains, we're all going to be rich, and probably wouldn't even have to work at that point as well. Now, my problem with extreme takes is that, and more often than not, every time there's been a technological breakthrough in any industrial revolution or otherwise, these extreme takes tend to gain traction and they tend to fuel then bubbles because there's fear in the market and there's excitement in the market. And what that does is, what bubbles tend to do is, while they allow for rapid expansion and transformation in that, through that technological innovation, it tends to nudge you in the wrong direction because of a fear or two or so on. Um, how do you see the narrative and the whole conversation around the financial side of the bubble and then the technology per se itself as well? Because again, if you look at the internet, there was a financial bubble, but the technology was so powerful and foundational that the most valuable companies in the world 30 years on, almost 30 years on, are all internet based companies, right? So what is your take on the AI bubble and what comes after if it does end up correcting?
Yeah. So I don't I don't abide by any of the extreme takes that you mentioned, right? I don't live on either side of that bell curve or believe that dystopian future is happening. I mean, just look at like we're if you're talking about go to market, like um take cold calling for example, right? Like one of the it's like with the invention of the phone, like one of the very early ways that people would get sales done. Like we are now in what 2026, and all of this AI and selling stuff is going on, and like guess what? People are still using the phone in
Mm.
go to market and sales. So things change, but it doesn't mean that things go away. And so, yeah, I think like everything, we're in uncharted territory. And I don't know, that's where I look at the bubble a little bit too. And I'm like, okay, like, you know, this is something like we've seen these revolutions, like you said, play out in the past, but we don't know how similar or different this one's going to be. So we have some expectation that like we'll get through it, we'll be on the other side, and things will be different, but also feel the same. But then we don't necessarily know how or why that'll happen. So I look at the bubble and I'm like, things seem really crazy right now. But I'm like, do they seem as crazy as like, toiletpaper.com, like going public, and like, it's like, I don't know, but like, we'll know eventually. And
Yeah.
things are evolving and like changing at such a rapid pace where it's like, we may think things are crazy right now, but something new is going to happen in a month, 3 months that we'll look back on and be like, that wasn't
What were
crazy
you
at all.
thinking?
Yeah, exactly. So because of the rate of change right now, I just can't say I'm like, like my my mind is open, I guess, in terms of like how this thing
You just go
ultimately
with the flow.
plays
Whatever,
out.
whatever AI throws at you, you'll see
Yeah.
one day at a time.
Yeah. I just don't believe that it's gonna be something as drastic as one of the dystopian, scenarios that you mentioned before. You know, I don't believe that's gonna happen.
That makes a lot of sense. Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time out and sharing all that insight. I'm excited to see how you sort of expand on Eventful. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that insight.
Yeah, you bet.
And for all of you guys, let me know in the comment section below. How do you see? I mean, are you adhering to the dystopia or utopia, or are you taking things one day at a time as well? Let me know in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on the core? I think learning for me particularly in this podcast, the human interaction bit, the live interaction bit, GTM and B2B and all of those sort of enterprise sales works and flows are increasingly moving towards more human interaction. Do you agree? Let me know in the comment section below. But nonetheless, it was Syed Muzamil Hasan Zedi. You're watching Beyond the Bubble podcast powered by Noodle Seed Studios. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next week.